Hey, what's up, dudes? It's me, Mr. Airon here. Welcome back to another video. How are you guys doing today? So, since yesterday it was been Halloween, it was all fun and games here and everything, and today is now November 1st here. So, I just thought maybe I would decide to make a video about the history of Thanksgiving, since it's the beginning of November and Halloween has been already over here. So, and I thought this is a video that also this audience might enjoy here, and another history of holidays here. So yeah, but before we get into this video, if you guys haven't yet, please be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel if you're new. Don't forget to comment and turn on the bell notifications. That way you get notified by every video that I'll be posting in the channel. And yeah, so let's get to it. Alright, so let's get started. So here, for a good start, I uploaded two YouTube videos, the one from Simple History and one from the National Geographic, where they talk about the history of Thanksgiving. So if you guys want to see those videos, I'll put those in the link in the description down below. But let's keep moving. All right, so let's talk about the origins of the Thanksgiving. How basically of like how did it all started here? So the origins of Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving was a tradition that can be traced back to the days prior to Thanksgiving being observed by the colonists in New England and Canada. The Wampanoag is also celebrated for harvest festivals throughout the year because like basically it was basically during around this time here about like many of the early settlements into the New England colonies and their settlements into the America and like basically their conquest of British also into Canada here. We're establishing forts, settlements, and trades into with many of the natives and established many settlements and many forts here. And this was also basically a time of like basically around the New England era where they also had like basically where they come from the Puritans and also the Pilgrims had also came to the New England colonies here, and with also with the because of like with the arrival of like the Mayflower here, because before back in England around the 16th century in the 1530s when King Henry VIII had basically broke off with the Catholic Church here because of his refusal to basically to divorce his the church's refusal to divorce his wife here and like basically remarry another wife here. The church refused, and then he broke off and created the Church of England here, and they face and also the Puritans and the Pilgrims basically fled off, and basically they actually landed into to the Netherlands way before they then arrived eventually into the Americas, in which then like they basically the Puritans themselves they built and they were basically set up the new their own governments here, and basically elected like equal rights and equal laws here, and they also established like their own Massachusetts Bay Colony too here, which is also a part of what is now both Massachusetts and modern day state of Maine. So, and uh, and this was also the time of like basically of John Smith here, who was basically another of the traders who basically went in and traded with into contact with many of the Native Americans. Though he was not like basically like because like with the story with also with Pocahontas during around that time, he did not actually marry Pocahontas like as depicted in many Disney Hollywood movies or anything like that, because when he arrived, Pocahontas was like 10 years old here, and she didn't marry off. And secondly, the Native Americans did not actually like capture John Smith because none of them were even trying to kill him. They were just actually trying to bring off like their Native American customs and traditions here, and so but it is a go. But eventually, when the fall arrives, the natives were basically out of food and supplies, and then which made John like basically very furious here, and kind of like kind of took over the settlements until then when the natives had then eventually revolted here. Until then, when John Smith was then basically blow up in the face here by when he was smoked up his cigar here, and where it was actually filled with gunpowder, and until he was then they had to be sent back here, and whereas then like later Pocahontas, when she became an adult here, she actually married up John Rolfe here, and they basically they just how they did this was she was kidnapped, and then she was then later married up, and then like where they get a wedding, and all the way back to England here. And yeah, that's one of the most tragic stories. And when Pocahontas died, she never got to see her beloved home, never again here. So and yeah, so like basically what they did, that's what I'm saying. Like to like their trains, and also this is also a time of when when English colonies when they're with the indention service who were working on the grains and for a harvest on agriculture that was later replaced with many African slaves here from the continent of Africa in the transatlantic slave trade here who were sent to the American colonies on the harvest and tradition, and also like with resources such as iron, gold in here, and there's also constant Indian raids in throughout the colony, and also basically like with a bunch of riots and rebellions here, such as also later in King Philip's War, which I will get to later, made it very difficult to control to the colony and with the pay, and but it's still under the firm of the English crown here, and. And yes, and also this was also the time of also basically not forget the Salem witch trials here, which are basically that women were also basically that they were then caught, and like basically there were several few women that were basically held to trial and basically to the English court in the American colonies, and they were then basically charged up for practicing any or like then basically would then get executed because of like basically practicing any such like any witchcraft or like roles or like the woman possessing a ghost or something like that here, and so um yes, and so it was during that time here, and this was also not forget. Also, this was also the fact that there were time also of Bacon's rebellion here. Who Bacon's rebellion was basically it was led by this guy named Bacon, which that's where after then when the African slaves here who was brought into the Americas in 1619, this guy named Bacon here he said he wanted to like expand all his English colonies to expand also westwards, but many of them did just refused here because they thought it would be a lot more expensive here, and it's also a large territory to expand, and also concerns of like attacks from many Native American tribes, and so that made Bacon really upset here, and like basically protested, and then later also eventually burned down the settlement of Jamestown here, which by then was when it was after when it was like first being settled and established by the English. It was that back then their very first American colony, as alongside with Plymouth, and yeah, so how this also first Thanksgiving here is like in 1621, the harvest feast between the Wampanoag and people and the English colonists are often called the first Thanksgiving, but much of the story was created decades later. The Wampanoag provided food and taught the colonists about agriculture and hunting. The feast was like likely part of the 3 day celebration that included games and like foot races and marksmanship here. And like basically they did not like basically like actually added like many traditional foods there, like I don't know, like turkey or mashed potatoes or anything like that. They probably just introduced more like corn, grapes, and probably some pig or ham, I guess there. And so yeah, I they haven't introduced the turkey yet, so into the fact that the Thanksgiving. So there was good relations between them and the English, and there was also rivals and wars and rebellions against them, such as the King Philip's War starting in 1675, which I'll get to way later again here. But let's move on. All right. The true history of oppression. The relationship of the European settlers and Native Americans was marked by oppression and bloodshed. For example, the Wampanoag lost about 75% of the people due to European, not just like basically wars and destruction, but also diseases. Some Native Americans believe that Thanksgiving celebrations was a true history of oppression and bloodshed. Others think that Thanksgiving was a time of gather with family and give thanks, but also remembering the history of their people. Another true fact is that how Native Americans taught their struggling colonists to survive in the New World. So, like I basically said, like the King Philip's War, like in from 1675 till like 1678, was like basically a war between like many of the Native Americans and the English colonists here, who basically where the English had like basically killed many natives and like basically destroyed like many of their homes and settlements here during around this war here. Yeah, so let's get to it. All right, so now let's think about the Thanksgiving proclamations from both George Washington and FDR or Franklin D. Roosevelt, and also to Abraham Lincoln, which I'll get to the last slide here. But the Thanksgiving proclamations was first issued. The Proclamation of Thanksgiving is the first President George Washington when he was elected president in 1789. He called in to the graduate Americans for their victory for the American Revolutionary War here, and whereas like basically the next proclamation was in 1863 under the presidency of Abraham Lincoln, who has established Thanksgiving as a yearly celebration on the last Thursday of November, basically for Lincoln saying about consolidating into the speech of those who died and fought really hard against the Confederates in many battles, such as the brutal Battle of Gettysburg, which is like a turning point, which just turned the tide of the U.S. Civil War. And you got Franklin D. Roosevelt's proclamation, who said that basically he moved Thanksgiving to the second to the last Thursday of November to avoid shortaging the Christmas shopping seasons here. And yeah, so let's move. And now here's Abraham Lincoln, who was some things he noted about the Thanksgiving Proclamation that included the dates and the months of Thanksgiving celebrations that are varied over time, and Thanksgiving proclamations really mentioned in the U.S. governmental institutions, democracy, the Constitution, laws, or voting. And Thanksgiving proclamations had increasingly included specific historical references, such as the Plymouth, the Pilgrims, Indians, Wangapong, and the settlers back in the 17th century. That all of that stuff that I've actually been mentioning about before. And yeah, so this is basically my so yeah, there you guys go. There's my short like presentation of me trying to cover like the whole like the history about Thanksgiving here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if there's other facts of history that of the Thanksgiving that I might have maybe been a bit of missed out there or something like that, or maybe a good or like basic or something like that, then please let me share your thoughts in the comments below. But I hope you guys learned something new here, and if you want to see more history content like this, then what are you waiting for? Please be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel if you're new. Don't forget to comment, to turn on the bell notifications. That way you get notified by every video that I'll be posting in the channel. And yeah, so I'll see you guys in my next video. So, Mr. Airon's out. Peace.